Okay, we have more interesting sessions lined up this afternoon for you. And the first of them is with someone who's done solid research in the area that he's going to talk about. Truly an expert in his area. So I'll now call upon Puneet Gupta. He's the CEO of IFMR Finance. He's come from Chennai to talk to us about wealth management for the non-elite, non-urban households. Moderating the session with him will be Gautam Chikarmane. And Gautam has left 10 minutes for you at the end of the session to ask questions. So I invite both Puneet and Gautam.
Is the mic working? Mic काम कर रहा है? क्या हुआ? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, even I am feeling a little lazy. Post-lunch sessions are like that. And I thought that rural finance was going to not only make you feel the way I am feeling, but put you to sleep. Unfortunately, that's not true. The fact is that what IFMR in general and Puneet in particular have done in certain districts in Tamil Nadu in the area of rural finance is something highly emulatable. It is a revenue model. It's an alternative that all of us have been fighting around, trying to strive for, trying to discuss. The whole idea of, the whole concepts of expanding the markets into new areas, getting new investors and so on profitably. Now, it might seem like a contradiction, but it is not. And Puneet is going to talk about that. He had threatened to put us to sleep with 8 to 10 slides. I wanted only one. We've compromised on 3. But I think the kind of statistics that he had, I might just allow him some more leeway. And I'm sure you will enjoy this session tremendously. Over to you, Puneet. No more than 5 minutes, because I think the questions will be far more than the slides.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gautam. I just put a little bit of context to who we are, and I think that is going to help a little bit about as we go into this conversation later on. I'll just quickly point you to a presentation. I'll skip a lot of slides here. So what we have set up as the KGFS model is a rural distribution model. The rural distribution model has it currently operates through a network of 200 branches in 3 states. We reach out to 350,000 customers. The idea is to set up a physical branch in a remote.
Can you hear it? Can you please increase the volume, please?
Okay. So what I was saying was that we've set up a network of 200 branches today.
Okay.
We reach out to 350,000 households. And the idea was to set up a physical network of branches in deep rural geographies. Through these physical branches, we offer multiple financial services to customers, which includes loans, insurance, mutual funds, different kinds of investment products. We offer payment services, remittance services. The idea very much was to create a one-stop shop for a customer to engage with different financial institutions. As of now, we have in products which are seen as typically very difficult. For example, term life insurance products are in the Indian context considered very difficult products to sell. It is believed that Indian markets look at insurance product as investment products, and therefore they expect money to come back to them. Even in products like this, we managed to get very significant scale. Today we have over 300,000 active insurance policies across life and accident insurance. So that's just one scale that we've been able to reach in terms of our work. How we serve the client, this is a picture of a typical branch that we have set up. The branch is always online. It has computers which are real-time connected to mutual fund houses, insurance companies, so that there is no physical movement of paper. What we realize, and as Gautam was talking about earlier, that one of the main challenges has been how do you make it profitable? Our response was make it operationally very easy, minimum handshakes, let's not have paper moving across again and again, let's not keep entering KYC data again and again. So everything for us had to be completely e-enabled. You see no paper in our branches. Computer screens are embedded within the desks so that the conversation between the customer and our front-end employee, who we call as a wealth manager, are near seamless. The idea very much is to engage a customer into a dialogue where you're not pushing a few products, but you really try to understand what a customer is searching for and offer to them financial solutions. In the absence of a financial solution, a person may borrow high interest loans for a health related incident. Or a customer, in the absence of safe avenues to save, may not save but really just take a loan and repay over smaller installments, which is actually just the inverse saving. You save before and you spend, or you spend and you contribute on an ongoing basis. And the demonstration of rural households to be able to save is not unknown. We continuously hear of various scams where people are on a continuous basis duped by people who collect money in despair. It is primarily because the need for savings, the need for financial service is really important. It's just that we've always found it very difficult to provide avenues and means to be able to make this work. Some branches, all our transactions, in order to get proper security, are biometric, which means that we always know that the customer was present, the disbursement was to a customer, which again eliminates paper. No physical signatures are required unless and until the regulator requires us to get physical documents signed. In an Aadhaar environment, as we see, this may get actually a lot more wings. Today, we manage biometrics on our own. This is our own database. And really, I don't want to get into more details here, and this is a very busy slide. But really, what I wanted to demonstrate was people are engaged in a rural geography in multiple activities. This is a typical slide for 2 villages, very remote villages. These are at a distance which is typically more than 10 kilometers from block headquarters. The total GDP of one village is 210 million rupees. The total GDP of another village is 253 million rupees. If you see agri income, which we all believe is a very significant part of rural incomes, in one village it's around 25%, in another it's around 9%. So there is a very, very significant pie when we talk about a small village of a population area between 9 to 11,000 people. It represents a very, very significant scale of opportunity. And given low consumption numbers, the ability to save is very high. I will not get into those details. I have a lot of slides on what we found as saving rates. And in conversations, if we need to look at the data, we'll get there. But with this context, I'll kind of leave it open for Gautam to ask me any questions that would have.
Yeah. So essentially what we are talking about is that there are villages which have a domestic product of 20 crore rupees.
Yes.
And which until you went were unserved by any financial services agents?
So I would say formal financial services were more or less absent. There have been money lenders. We found that Life Insurance Corporation had a fairly deep inroads. Several agents were offering life insurance policies, which were typically actually savings products, which were getting offered to customers. But if I were to take these two out broadly, you're right. There was just no other access, at least in our geographies.
And today also there could be many similar geographies. You are talking about Tamil Nadu, but similar geographies or similar economically structured villages would be existing all over.
To give you a statistic, we are present in 3 states. Tanjavur is the rice bowl of Tamil Nadu. It is amongst the richer geographies in Tamil Nadu. We set up in a place which has no more than 1 public sector bank branch, no private sector bank branch at all. It should be a village which has a population no greater than 10,000. Even with those indicators, today we have 70 plus branches in 1 district alone. So those are the kind of exclusion rates that we find out in villages.
Were there post office schemes available?
Post office is available, but post office, again, you have to see it as 2 different models. There are owned post offices and there are something called the licensed or the franchisee post offices. There are 100,000 licensee post offices which are run by non-employees of the post office. And therefore, all of the transactions that need to be done with the postal bank really need to be done not in the village where the licensee exists, but it actually needs to be done at a proper post office, which is almost as far as where the bank branch is.
And the banking correspondent model, has that been able to reach here so far in your experience?
In the places where we are present, we find that there is now increasing number of customer service points which are getting set up, which are also banking correspondents. Unfortunately, the kind of work that is happening there is not very significant. We ourselves are a banking correspondent for a large private sector bank. And there, because we've partnered with them on multiple financial services, including credit, we see the business to be of a very different order. Otherwise, the economics today on a standalone basis of what we see for a rural banking correspondent model do not look encouraging. There are
So the discussions that we have have had in the morning so far is that how to expand the mutual fund pie. So it's a very narrow look at financial services, although we'll try and broaden it as much as possible. Now, how is somebody sitting out here who wants to expand or look into these 20 crore GDP villages, go there, the argument being that if you're going to what is known as the hinterland, you need greater incentives, you need more money, more greater commission, and therefore the 100 rupee extra that you get from under SEBI rules and so on. You seem to have turned the model upside down. How does it work?
So
how do you make money? How do you build these 70 branches?
So let me, I have to get a little bit more into details. When we started our money market mutual fund distribution, which was the mutual fund that we started offering to our customers, we actually dropped the minimum investment amounts down to 20 rupees. And you could actually reinvest in multiples of rupee 1. The idea was if we could crash the amounts to such levels, we knew that we had made the model to work. So the idea really has been that if you look at an average costing per transaction basis, this really does not make us money at all. However, having set up a distribution network which offers multiple products, and we are very much an economies of scope organization, we offer multiple financial products. Now, on an incremental basis to offer a mutual fund product, where I do not have to take a physical printout, I don't have to submit the KYC again, it's an electronic transfer that happens, everything is a sunk cost. Every rupee that I make is a marginal investment in profit for me on the investment that we've already made. The great thing about mutual funds for us is it does not require capital from our side, and therefore any profit that we make is an equity kicker. So broadly speaking, that makes the entire economics work for us.
Just hold the thought. How many distributors here are exclusively mutual funds only distributors? And a wider scope with insurance and other products? Good. So suppose one of you were to go to the village, you would probably be in this model, except that you won't be offering credit unless you're a banking correspondent.
No, so we can offer credit without being a banking correspondent. As a non-bank finance company, we can offer credit. We can,
no, but as a distributor, a standalone distributor.
As a standalone distributor, yes, you're right. You can offer a credit only as a banking correspondent.
As a banking correspondent. So I think the model would change. As we were discussing earlier, the financial planning model where you take into account the householder's entire finances, right from cash flows to credit, to retirement, to wealth creation and insurance into account. That's where I think you are offering the kind of values. Absolutely. Now, the other aspect is commissions. How does you started small and you have built it up to a scale where now you are able to offer those. But for an individual going into those villages in order to expand the pie or get access to a new market, will it work for him? At what point do economies of scale work?
See, I once again look at it from, if I look at a single product perspective, and especially when I look at products like mutual funds, given all of the restrictions on how much commission can be paid for distribution, it becomes a very, very big stretch. And especially even the distribution numbers of 100 rupees that we're talking about, if the investment size is even 1,000 rupees, 100 rupee charge to the customer really doesn't work. The customer will straight away tell you, I'm much better off putting the money under my pillow, or I'll go buy gold. So really, we're not talking about 100 rupees here. We're really talking about a very small percentage. In our worldview, we actually think anything greater than 50 basis points of whatever amount the customer is making, is trying to put in, is basically a no-no. Even though customers may put in the money, given the fact that they may not have an option today, but it's not a long-term sustainable business model. Now, when we talk about such small numbers, it really, what is important is that you need to get a scope which starts to give you enough numbers to be able to pay for the cost of the front end and a margin. It's basically how low can you set up that particular structure is basically what is the critical factor. In our world, we service 10,000 customers. Within 9 months of our operations, we have as many as 70 to 80% of the households to become customers of one or the other product or service that we offer. And the goal for us is to cross a top line from a village to go over 60,000 rupees.
60,000
60,000 rupees
of what?
of total income for us, which could come from interest income, insurance, mutual funds. The moment we start to target that number on a contribution basis, this branch is starting to add to our profitability.
In the branch, I noticed you had 3-4 people. So all this is taken care of in 60,000 rupees.
Everything happens within 60,000 rupees.
How is that possible?
So we hire
Do
local
you pay
people.
minimum wage or not?
We pay much higher than minimum wage. So the most important thing for us was to hire local people. We hire people who are typically 12th class, 12th standard pass, though in most geographies we end up hiring people who are graduates. These people are put through a very, very strong training program. So we have a 21-day induction program where we train people in use of products. But more importantly, we have an algorithm which supports putting in all the information that you're talking about. How do you look at a household's cash flows? How do you construct a balance sheet for a household? How do you now construct a profit and loss for a household? Capture stated goals that the customer has within 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and then create a financial plan. All of this in our world happens through an algorithm which is available online real time to our wealth managers. So in effect, we are training them for 30 days to be able to interpret these algorithms and then make a pitch to the customer to say, this is the solution that really works for you. So by kind of working with people who are local, who otherwise from an economic opportunity perspective, this is a great economic opportunity for them to work in, and they're typically supplementing their incomes from other things that they're doing in a village. It becomes a model which becomes extremely sustainable at the cost numbers. And
How accountable are they in terms of, if you're saying that maybe harvest time, they will just vanish. And that's the time when somebody needs an insurance cover or insurance, health insurance, or there's an emergency. So how accountable is this team of people who otherwise has other
So
things
typically people within the branches are available from the time the branch opens to the time the branch closes. We have a way to figure it out. We have snap audits, we have biometrics to figure out when the people walked in, walked out of the branches. And most importantly, this economic opportunity for the wealth manager is an important employment opportunity. This is a steady flow of income to this particular person, and not too many opportunities are available. So anyway, this person sees that this is a good job for me. But more importantly, through the systems, again, we are able to track how many transactions are happening on an ongoing basis. Who did we reach out to? How many people's such reports were pulled down on a day-to-day basis, and what conversations were we having with the customer? So it gives us sitting at the, so the idea was to use a lot of technology to get rid of a lot of monitoring costs, to get rid of a lot of audit-related stuff. And that also helps us maintain control over what is the interaction that the customer has with our teams. Also, it helps us always look at the fact that are we really offering people right products at the right time. So for example, when, as you said, if a person is an agriculturist, and if I know the person, and for us it's agriculture is not important. We actually capture whether the person grows paddy or groundnut. So from our queuing basis, the wealth manager gets an alert at the end of paddy season for a person who grows paddy, and for groundnut season gets it when the groundnut season is happening. Very important is that when do you reach out and give the message to the customer? You don't do it at the right time, you've lost the customer forever. So our model really works because it's hinged a lot on technology, and we've tried to improve
Your
it.
model is also very organizational rather than an individual entrepreneur. So while there are
Absolutely.
entrepreneurial opportunities available, it cannot be a one-man person going into the village and coming out with some revenues or offering certain services, and certainly not in a single product like a mutual fund. Would you say that? Agree?
Yes and no.
Maybe a team of 5 people getting together offering various services can start this?
So we actually believe that technology is today, the kind of technology that I'm talking about looks very, very onerous, but it's very easy. We ourselves are willing to supply it to various people. To say people.
Can somebody please tell these guys behind to
So technology costs are kind of reducing very drastically. Our technology is available to everybody. We are offering it to customers. What can be done in our branches through laptops and desktops? Today we have our own mobile application where a person can go in the village and can actually use our own mobile application to be able to do transactions online real time. The important thing really is that if an individual or a group of individuals are going to a village to offer certain kinds of products, it automatically, by definition, eliminates certain products. For example, loans are eliminated. You can offer to people insurance, you can offer to people mutual funds, you can offer various other investment avenues. And at the same time, your reach also increases quite drastically. You could cover multiple villages through your actions. It is possible at a distribution income level for an individual to carry a mobile application that we develop and make money at a village level. What is very complex from a customer perspective is how do you in this environment create incentives for a proper sale? How do you make sure that the customer's interests are protected and somebody is not just trying to sell as much as is possible to get incremental incomes? The second thing that a physical branch does is that it also becomes a service point. If a customer needs claims, if the person needs redemption, today you can walk into a branch and you know that redemption is going to be made available to me if I walk into the branch. If the person comes on a beat, you don't know who to go to in order to redeem your investments, for example, in a mutual fund. The third factor is trust. When people see a structure like ours, when they see a physical structure, there are computers, there are people who come in uniforms, there are people who are opening the branch day in and day out, come rain, come shower. We had operations in Orissa, in Behrampur district, where the landfall happened for the cyclone Phylin. Our branches were opened on the day after cyclone, and our last branch opened at 4 p.m. the next day. And that immediately gives customers the confidence to say, these guys are here. We worked overtime to make sure that redemptions happened, technology systems were down, power was down. We used telephones, we used people going from our branches to head office to make sure that we were physically transferring information.
Okay, so one aspect of trust is that when somebody invests money and when he wants to take it out at redemption,
absolutely,
the value of that portfolio, because the market has suppose crashed, is less than what he invested.
Right.
Or less than what he expected to gain.
Right.
How do you handle such?
Very important question for us.
How do you keep trust intact?
Very, very important question for us. So the customer really doesn't understand equity or debt. The customer really doesn't understand what scheme are you trying to put money in. And more complex the names, the more confused the customer is. We typically we give an advice to the customer on what they should invest in. Typically, we tend to be more conservative in advice. So anybody who puts in money based on the tenor of their goals, we suggest to them to invest either in money market mutual funds, very liquid. Of course, there's a risk there as well, but the difference in risk is very, very different from an equity investment. Anybody who tells us that they want to put money aside for 10 years plus, for example, where they want to use this money for education of their kids, marriage of their kids, building a home 10 years hence, it's basically there when we start to have a conversation on equity. And there's an extended conversation to say, you realize that if you were to take this money sooner than 10 years, the value of this money could reduce. And that's an important piece of conversation that we have. In tenors between 3 to 10 years, typically we have two options again. We can go in for fixed deposits, recurring deposits, as well as some other debt funds that we can offer. But we do not offer to the customer the flexibility of saying that I have a 3-year investment horizon, put money in an index fund for us. We will not do it.
So you are using some form of an invisible financial planning, risk assessment, risk tolerance model.
Yes.
At a mass level, and you're able to do this with the economies that you talked about, 60,000 rupees per branch.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. If you don't have questions, any questions? Yeah, I thought so, because I'm getting very excited by this model. Please, will somebody please give him a mic?
Hi, Puneet. My name is Partha Iyengar. I've been following your model since you people set up the pilot project in Tanjavur. Thanks to Deven Shah here. He talks so much. It's very inspiring and motivating. And what you said is just mind-blowing, the way you've grown the branches. My just one question is that you did mention people will not pay fees, right? If I'm not wrong, for the service. I have a research which says, which Rupa Purushothaman had done, the BRICS author along with Goldman Sachs person, Jim whatever. She had done research in Dharavi slums, focused on financial services, and she found out the women especially are willing to pay money for the services. It's marginal, yes, on a subscription model, provided they see value, and two, it's going to help achieve their child's education dreams, especially women child, and also for the family in terms of wealth accumulation. So just want to know whether...
Yeah. No, so you're right. Let me just say what exactly was I trying to say. Whenever it's a goal-based thing, where a person has a goal, people will typically be willing to pay a little higher. In fact, that behavior is demonstrated immensely when you look at microfinance models. My belief about all microfinance models is that when people borrow money at 26% rates of interest or 24% rates of interest, when they're paying weekly, they're essentially synthetically creating a savings product with a negative return. So rather than deferring your purchase by 9 or 10 months, you basically purchase the goods first and then you keep paying for it on a regular basis. So clearly, in a lot of microfinance models, the interest that you pay is very much the fee that people are willing to pay. When you look at savings as a standalone, because a lot of people also have regular savings that they continue to have, which is not necessarily goal-based, which is also connected to people have cash flows which are very inconsistent. People have cash flows which are very irregular. Now, the moment you start to look at money that you have today that you may need to withdraw 3 months later, and there you start to look at fees, in the short run, for a certain number of clients, people will pay. But what we realize is that there is a situation, especially in more safer environments where people are far more sure about the environments that they're in, people are much more surer about their social structures around, where people might start to choose other investment opportunities. In Tamil Nadu, for example, we find gold coins becomes a very important piece where people start to put money in, it becomes extremely liquid. People will start to choose other avenues. So there is a limit, there is a tipping point. Clearly, we've also seen this continue. We've seen people are willing to pay immense amount of fees. Just about, if you look at remittances, for example, is a classic case in point. The fees that my average customer pays for remittance, I would never ever remit money at that fees, unless and until really, I have no other choice and I'm stuck somewhere and I need cash. So clearly the kind of fees that people are willing to pay, the elasticity to price for rural populations, for customers that we reach out to is extremely low.
Yes, sir. Sir, you could meet him afterwards, please.
Hello, I'm Jayant Vidwans. Basically, when you are trying to do business in small villages, so you have first problem of banking system, having a checkbook facility and having minimum balance in saving account. Plus, for every transactions, bank may not charge you, but even for SIP, you have a proper banking system for auto debit facility. Same way, when you do the insurance, you have to do a medical for the insurance cover. For all these things, you have to have some services of some other organization. So how you are managing that?
So a lot of the work is that we do is thanks to our partners. We are, for example, in conversation with people here in this room on mutual funds. A lot of our work is in designing processes that work. When you look at, for example, insurance products, if you were to look at doing a medical, the economics doesn't work for anybody, the customer, the insurance company, or anybody else. A lot of the underwriting in our world starts to follow what is the group underwriting norm that most people have in their organizations. Whoever has a corporate policy would have experienced some of those norms. So the expectation is, if you were to reach out a significant population, can risks reduce? Just an example, what we really try to do is find out and work with the product manufacturers, be it insurance company, be it a mutual fund house, to figure out how do you make the process to be extremely light? How do you make sure that it checks all the right boxes when it comes to risk for the entity, when it comes to KYC norms? Create a process whereby the part on handling cash, which is always a big concern for any of our partners because we are the entity on the ground and they're not. How do we make that to be absolutely robust? That's always been our focus. So we typically have to customize products when we take it to the customer. And the processes have to be customized.
So to reframe his question, suppose he were to go into that village, he would need a banking backbone ready in order for him to be able to deliver the services that he wants to. How does he negotiate that?
See, in our world, if you were to look at it, cash management is a challenge that we have. So in my village, I don't have a branch. However, I'm headquartered in Chennai. Today, I can transfer money to anywhere in the world. I have a technology system which tells me at the end of the day, I owe, let's say, X 100,000 rupees to an insurance company or a mutual fund house. From my account, I do a transfer to their account end of the day. In fact, even before we do that, we typically put a cash deposit in with them. So as transactions keep hitting their servers, they keep debiting my deposit account with them, and end of the day, I just top up the amount that I'm supposed to do. So from the manufacturer's perspective, they're not hit by the absence of banking account at the front end. They're hitting my bank account on an ongoing basis. And I take the cash management as an entire opportunity. But in my world, I have cash in and cash out. So I'm giving loans to customers where I'm cashing out, and I'm collecting premiums from customers, I'm collecting investments from customers, I'm collecting repayments from customers. So once you get the algorithm right, the cash management really becomes an easy process for you.
Next question.
So one of the reasons why we had to slow down on a mutual fund portfolio, we started off in the first 4 months, we built 17,000 folios. And in order to get to these 70,000 folios, we had to also get PAN cards issued for rural customers. Several customers did not have PAN cards. Even after that, we managed the scale of 17,000. We had to slow down primarily because at one stage, there were requirements that both at the kind of investment and redemption, you need a bank account. Thankfully,
But
last
doesn't the
year,
banking correspondent model allow for that?
unfortunately, SEBI basically says under its laws is that the mutual fund company has to put money directly into the bank account of the customer. In our world, when you redeem it, the challenge is even if the customer has a bank account, typically that account is a no-frills account, it is a non-RTGS account, you put in money into a pool account within a particular bank, and after that it will take 15 days for the credit advice to reach the customer. And in a world where the bank accounts are not always online for all the customers, specifically for rural customers, they are not always online. Even if they had a bank account, for us it's a no-go. So what we have been trying to work with have been on innovative product models on how do you work on cash out. At the same time, we've been working on advocacy with SEBI to find out what really can be done on this. If one side of the challenge on where the customer is allowed to invest in cash has been sorted, can we use things like biometrics to accept redemptions? That's not sorted out yet. So our product today is not off the ground as of now. Mutual funds as a product, we had to stop when this regulation came. But now, having also said that, we ourselves are a correspondent for Axis Bank. And out of the 200 branches that I spoke about, in 70 branches, we have no such constraint. We have a bank account which is real time. We're able to start work on those branches. And really, at least through us as a distributor, we feel that we will be able to sort this challenge one way or the other. And we are really at it to see how can we extend it now from 70 to all 200.
Any other question?
Yeah, Mr. Puneet, your model is quite insightful, so thanks for sharing that. I've got two questions. One is, as you rightly mentioned, I mean, the processes are very strong, which actually enables the organization to do all these kind of things. So one question is that how much time did it take for you as an organization to create such seamless processes? And secondly, you mentioned about the 60,000 rupees per family revenue per annum, which I think on a rural side is...
No, that's per branch. That's the cost of a branch. It's not per family.
Okay, 60,000 rupees per branch cost. Okay, per month. So first question.
Yeah, so on the, I would say where we started off was, we had an idea fairly which was crystal clear, which was if we started off moving paper from one place to another, if we continued to collect KYC documents over and over again, and if we had to physically manage handovers to our partners, we knew we could not be in this business. The very thought that we wanted to make our organizations paperless, I think was, to my mind, the most crucial step that we could have taken. Having figured out that this is what we are going to do, the rest was really, it started to fall in place. we have taken, and we've been in business for 5 years now. So I would say that we've been learning for 5 years, and I continue to feel that we'll learn for another 50 years.
Just hold the Prem, we started a little late. So, and this is, I think, one of the most insightful sessions that we had. Can we have 5 more minutes? Next question, please. Somebody from that side? Nobody? Yeah.
Any plans of moving to tier 1, tier 2 cities and having a similar model over here as well?
From an overall need perspective, we've always felt urban slums are kind of as important for us to reach out to. It's really at a model level, we feel that we are far stronger when it comes to rural geographies. One of the most important thing that we feel that we have been able to do is to understand how to lend in rural geographies. And these are all, we were talking about populations which have no documented proof of income. So in all our work on income assessment, expense assessment, drawing out balance sheets, we need to look at data which comes from various sources. In a rural geography, given the fact that a lot of customers, economic opportunities, the things that they engage in, their property, everything is confined in a rural geography, the entire data becomes obvious to us much faster. When you get into an urban situation, a neighbor doesn't really know what truly a neighbor does. It becomes very hard to then start to getting data on what is income, what is expenditure, what products to recommend. And in our world, we take land protection very seriously. We do not want to get into a situation where we end up extending our model into an urban area today without really truly working on how do you start assessing a customer, how do you understand a customer. The day we do that, we'll definitely move to an urban situation. It's on the cards, but.
How do you deal with mis-selling?
Oh.
Suppose somebody has been sold a wrong product, maybe wrong insurance. Instead of a term, he's been sold an investment product.
Right.
How do you deal with it?
So part of this we control by offering products that we believe in. For example, in insurance, we don't believe in an endowment plan or into a ULIP plan. It's not offered, it can't be sold. Only a term plan can be sold in our branches. Partly we handle through that. But even there could be challenges. Somebody whose present value of all future incomes is, let's say, 100,000, you can try to sell them 500,000 rupees worth of insurance. Or you could offer to a person an incorrect product type. I should give you one example of what we did early on in our life. Within 6 months of us setting up our operations, we realized a customer came to us who was a daily wage laborer, sole wage earner, 2 kids, no real assets at all, and she came to us to take a loan. She took a loan against gold, and as per our understanding, we should not have offered this product to her unless and until we had a detailed conversation with her to take a personal accident insurance policy. At her age, we felt that she was a sole wage earner. If something were to happen to her, it would put a lot of her household into distress, and her last set of assets, which was jewelry, was anyway going to be pledged to us. So from a loan perspective, we were secure, but from a customer perspective, if something were to happen to the customer would have been at a very, very massive risk. At the same time, we also had a tenet to say, do not force a sale. So we have no bundling policy. If the customer says no, we honor the no. Unfortunately for us, the customer took the loan and died within a period of 1 month because of an accident. We tried to investigate, we understood, and we realized that although we did speak to the customer about the product, we really didn't build a convincing case for it. We waived the loan, we returned the jewels. In addition to that, we made it absolutely clear through a massive training program for across the organization to say these things should not happen again. And in a world where people are not putting pressures on us to say that you need to show this kind of customer protection, I would say that a lot of us who came to set up this entire business had to really count on each other to be able to be kind of conscious keepers of one another. But some of these stories have a lasting impact. So I would say because it became very known, there was a training connected to this. We made sure that this case continues to be a part of our inductions. Subsequently, we've had 1 or 2 more cases. Everything starts to find its way into induction, and it just creates a culture across the organization. So our biggest, I would say, weapon against mis-sale today is culture.
Fascinating. We are just out of time. But this has been truly a fascinating and insightful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Puneet. This was really wonderful. This was really new and this was really fresh. This is the kind of stuff that we wanted to introduce at this platform. And I'm glad that Gautam, you introduced us to Puneet. So can I now invite Mr. Sarat Sharma of IDBI to come and do the honors of giving our guest, Mr. Puneet, our guest speaker, a token of appreciation. Exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Gautam.
Okay.